You're making your way through that quest, and suddenly you die. How do you handle character death in the various game books that you're playing? That's what we're going to explore in this vlog. And I feel, much like board games, house rules are open. There's a lot of possibilities. But for myself, it really depends on the type of game book that I'm playing. I will follow the rules as written. Death is permanent. Once you're dead, you start over. Although there is a possible little side rule that occasionally I will play. From that perspective, though, there are certain players that will, if you die, you'll backtrack. Or if you die, you might not reset all the way at the beginning. You might be aware that if I go back a chapter or two, I'll start at that point. For me, if I'm dead, I try it again. I go through it again. And there's a big difference if you're playing, pulling in the classic game books for me, like Sorcery. If you're playing Sorcery and you die, then yes, you're going to lose some gear, but you can go through the same path or a different path. Character death in those books, because they play a little bit quicker, it's not so much of a problem, in my opinion. If we move into something like Fabled Lands, another very popular game book series that spawns over multiple game books, like literally you can play the one book, but then you can jump to a bunch of different books with the same character at different points and different times. It's very complex. Character death there doesn't really bother me as much, simply because I can just play a completely different path. I can go explore a completely different way to make my way through the various quests or sub-quests. And then you have games like Destiny Quest. These game books are really, really thick. There are a lot of quests in them, and you gear up and you get to decide where you're going to go and what you're going to do. Character death here, even some of the books that I've played through a few times, so I'm somewhat familiar with them, character death here really hurts, because you're a number of quests in, you've defeated a number of kind of bosses to get there. Your gear is pretty good. It's a very gear-heavy game. And at that point, starting completely over, that is a challenge. But even when that happens, I personally feel, hey, I'm dead, start over, and let's try to make some better choices. There are some tactics, I feel, to mitigate that, because you might say, Fritz, look, it's about the dice. Whether I'm using a physical D6, physical D10, or I'm flipping through the pages, if there's an encounter, even if I am fully healed up, and we're going to talk about healing and gear as you move through various quests, even though I'm like, look, I'm at 10 life, but just I'm rolling awful and it killed me, that could very well happen. I mean, if you've played board games, if you've played war games, you're going to try and control the randomness of the dice as best you can with gear and tactics. But sometimes it happens. If it happens, I guess that was the destiny. I guess that was the fates. So my question to you, my fellow gamebook enthusiasts, how do you handle character death? And I know some players, again, will just redo the battle, or they might backtrack a few chapters or that branching path and go in a different direction. Some players do play absolutely character death. One kind of side house rule that I really kind of liked, especially with Destiny Quest, was to take a little marker and put it in the book representing your character where they died, and your gear remains there. So this way, if I'm making my way through a pretty complex game book and I die halfway through, at that point, my old character is still there with their gear defeated. There is an incentive to go and make my way through, either directly or indirectly, to recover that. And I feel like, okay, I died, but I still got the gear. I'm working that aspect in. I do sometimes do that, but when I do play that way, because I think it's a great house rule, I never do it on the first or second playthrough with the game book. It has to be after I've played through it enough, and maybe I want to try out some different character classes, or I want to explore some different branching paths that might not be optimal. I'll add in the house rules at that point.